Welcome
to the Bring Me to Life podcast.
It's time to wake up
and shine on.
Hello. Thank you for waking up and
shining on with us.
Woohoo! It is episode 185. We're going to talk about some Christmas. We're going to talk about the tradition of Christmas. We're going to talk about some of the myths, some of the stories, and then we're going to get a little bit into the aliens at the end. So stick around because that's going to be really fun. But, you know, Christmas is a celebration, a time that a lot of people celebrate. A lot of different traditions from ancient past have celebrated. And we're going to get into all of that, which I'm really excited about today.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's hard to believe that this is already just a few days till Christmas when we're recording this. And I feel like 2020 has lasted forever, but also flown by. So how interesting, and I'm wondering how other people are feeling about this holiday right now, because for so long, my whole life, it's been very like consumery, and it's been all about like gifts and family and things like that, but there's a lot more history to it, and I've been really curious about it this year.
Yeah, definitely, me as well. And you know, being a Celtic person, I looked into a little bit of, you know, the Celtic tradition, as well as Yule. Looked into a little bit about Yule and what was called Saturnalia in the ancient Roman days.
I'm excited to hear about that, but I have to say I'm pretty interested in the concept of Santa Claus and how that came about and why we all look forward to this old man delivering us presents all the time.
Yeah, it is very interesting, you know, story. How, because I'm interested how it came to be where one man goes around and delivers all these gifts, where maybe it's not about the gifts, it's more about just, you know, somebody doing something nice for people who have done good, you know.
Well, actually I went down the rabbit hole and did some research, and I got led to an article by National Geographic and a couple of other pretty monumental articles, but I took some notes of things that really stuck out to me, and I'd kind of be interested to share some of them because I think they're questions or just things that other people would be interested in.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna dive into this for a second.
Dive it in.
Because first of all, we've all heard of Saint Nick or Saint Nicholas, and there's actually supposedly a day, many people may know this, it was new to me, that there's Saint Nicholas Day that is December 6th. And he was said to be a bringer of miracles, and people were really kind of worshiping this Saint Nicholas character and began to honor him kind of outside of religious matters. But he kind of started being a rebellious person in the early 19th century, where he's from 280 AD. In 19th century is when our Santa as we know him was kind of born. But the original Saint Nick faced execution, and it was because he wanted to allow Christianity to be a thing, and they were trying to basically prosecute anybody who believed in Christianity. So I think it's interesting that Saint Nicholas was born from a Christianity perspective. And
that is interesting.
Yeah, and he spent time in prison kind of fighting for Christianity.
But this was like not even during Christmas, or was Christmas a thing during this time?
Well, it wasn't a thing during this time. See, we had St. Nicholas Day before Christmas, and it was December 6th, and that was supposedly the day that he passed, if I have my history correct. Someone can correct me if they want, but this is just kind of what I learned in my rabbit hole. But it was a matter of him being worshipped as a patron of children. He apparently took care of children, and there's some kind of gruesome stories about him that I was not expecting to learn about. But people, again, they started to begin to honor him outside of just the religious perspective. And he was said to protect orphans and sailors. But the one I found interesting was the reason he became a protector of children was he protected 3 young girls that were sold into prostitution. And what he did was he basically paid their father gold to get them freedom so that they didn't have to be prostitutes. Don't always hear that story about Santa Claus. And then it gets weirder. Okay, so
our history is pretty messed up when you like go back and look at some of it.
Yeah, and then get this. So then it gets weirder. And this story was apparently really popular back in the day. But there was an innkeeper who killed 3 boys and supposedly pickled them.
Yeah.
And apparently St. Nicholas busted up in there, found the boys, revived them, and then punished the innkeeper. And this is kind of where people started to see St. Nicholas as this bearer of miracles because he revived these kids. But then also, if you were a bad person, he would punish you. And if you were a good person, he would save you or give you a gift of like a new life or a new opportunity, which I find extremely interesting because I was always like, oh, it was some guy who saw socks hanging over a fireplace and put candy canes in them, and it was something like that. And in some different places, maybe that was it. But
I mean, it's a combination of so many things coming together to what we know what it is now in 2020.
Oh, definitely. But then, so because he revived these kids and because he became a patron of children, people began to feast and celebrate him on December 6th. And they started worshiping him like Odin or Saturn or other gods. And they also said he could fly. They said that he had a white beard. So that's where that part came from. And they basically started telling children these stories to kind of make them afraid. And they would make him be good to get his blessing and protection. So that's where the good little boy or girl came from. So I thought that was pretty crazy. And after about the 1500s, the people of Europe kind of found this problematic. They didn't really want to worship any saints because they found the worshiping of anything other than the god to be sort of pagan-like, and they started to relate him to more witchy type practices or god and goddesses and things like that. So he didn't quite fit in, but their families still wanted a way to celebrate and also keep their children being good. So they tried to make the mission on to baby Jesus, which is where we got Christmas. So they changed it from December 6th to December 25th and tried to say that if you weren't a good little boy or girl, that baby Jesus wasn't going to protect you with his saving graces, you know, that whole Christianity thing. So it's like, okay, so there's a saint that took care of kids, and then that wasn't good enough, so we're going to give the job to baby Jesus and honor baby Jesus's birthday, supposedly, which wasn't technically supposed to be in December either.
Nobody knows when it is.
But that's why they started calling it Christmas instead of, you know, St. Nicholas Day.
Christ Mass.
And, you know, threats from baby Jesus to the children didn't quite work as well as the old man kind of character that they were given. So after a while, people of like the Netherlands and a couple of other societies, they refused to give up the Saint Nick persona. So they brought what they called as Sinterklaas to the New World, or the colonies, or the United States as we know them now. And at first the idea was kind of shunned by some of the colonists because it was also shunned in England because it was still too much like Saturnalia, which I'm going to let CeeLo talk about Saturnalia here in a few minutes. But I got to get this Santa Claus rant out because I am just baffled. So yeah, it wasn't until the 19th century that the big old Santa Claus that we know started to be born with his red suit and different things like that. And it was all because of the poem The Night Before Christmas and a few other little poems that came out around the time of the 19th century. And they took Saint Nick and they stripped him of any religious connections, and bam, there's this man that helps keep your kids in line so that you can give them gifts once a year and celebrate and be happy. And the stories kind of continued, and it built Santa into who we know today, including all of the famous reindeer, because at first it was just one reindeer. And in fact, there were many different versions of Santa Claus before the Jolly Santa Claus. And the image we know of Santa Claus didn't come to life until cartoonists started being popular. And there was one cartoonist in particular whose name I can't remember from the article, but he created the red suit and the hat and the concept of multiple reindeer before that, there were many different versions of Saint Nick or Santa Claus or Sinterklaas or Kris Kringle or whatever name you want to give him. And the kind of cartoon version and the Night Before Christmas version went viral. And people started, again, continuing to make their own versions of him. Apparently before the red-suited, bearded, jolly man we know today, there was even a version that kind of looked like George Washington, and someone said instead of a sleigh, he rode a broom, and that's where the kind of pagan connections came into play, and people were like, okay, we can't deal with this. We got to make it something that we can all roll with. And Father Christmas and Claus and Kris Kringle and them kind of became the most popular image of the Santa. But it gets a little bit weirder. I also always wondered where Jack Frost came from. You know how Jack Frost is usually represented as kind of a negative energy in a lot of kids' movies? Mm-hmm. Well, there's a reason behind that I didn't know. It came from the fact that in Russia, Stalin didn't like the concept of Santa Claus. He couldn't have a jolly old man just shaking things up and bringing joy to the world. So he tried to take over. He abolished Christmas in like the 1930s-ish and introduced Jack Frost, or Grandfather Frost. And he wanted the support of the people, so he wanted to continue to let there be a gift-giving holiday, but he refused to allow it to be on Christmas. So instead, he made it on New Year's, which is why some different traditional people have their holiday around New Year's instead of at Christmas on the 25th. So it gets weirder because he refused to let Jack Frost have a red suit. He had to have a blue suit, which I find interesting because, you know, those the primary colors going at battle there. And yeah, they tried to push this Jack Frost energy everywhere that the Soviets went, like Bulgaria and Poland, and it was just a no-go. So I just found all of that fascinating. Thanks for letting me babble it.
It's such a wild story, and it's so interesting to see how things like that evolve over time.
Yeah, like what I was like, how did we get this like old man watching us when we're sleeping? He knows when we're awake, mm-hmm. and he's bringing us gifts. Well, apparently it was because they wanted to scare kids, and they thought they might be sent into prostitution or murdered otherwise. What? Like, you don't hear about those things at Christmas anymore. Now it's all about family and the perfect present and mm-hmm. getting everywhere to see everybody, and mm-hmm. it's quite a different holiday.
Mm-hmm. It is. Our friend Sarah in the chat room said that Odin is said to be Santa, be like Santa, because he's so similar, and he also had an 8-legged flying horse similar to like 8 reindeer of Santa.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that the god of Saturn and stuff is connected to Odin and different things like mm-hmm. that too, and that's where Saturnalia came into play.
Mm-hmm. And Saturnalia is pretty super interesting because it's a big chunk of the puzzle to what we know of as Christmas today, because I don't know if anybody knew this, but in Massachusetts at one point in like the 1700s, a group of Puritans, like a hardcore group of Christians, ended up banning Christmas because of the roots, with the pagan roots, with the Saturnalia roots. And so Saturnalia is an event that the Romans celebrated, like a lot of other traditions, the winter solstice. They saw it as basically like a celebration of Saturn, the god of agriculture, to them. And that was a really powerful time. You know, in the ancient Celtic tradition, they believed that this time, the winter solstice, was the most powerful time of the year. And they celebrated Yule as well. And Yule was, a pagan tradition from a lot of the Germanic people and a lot of the Celtic people. And it's so crazy because when you think about it, Saturnalia came to be a combination of all these different traditions when the Romans were huge and they started to kind of conquer the world, and they they overtook Britain and started to combine some of their traditions with the traditions from that area. And that's how it ended up over in America, because, we had New England over in Massachusetts, and it made its way over the seas, came and they started celebrating it then too. And Saturnalia is awesome. It's a week-long celebration ending on the solstice, and in the Roman calendar it was on December 25th. Usually was the solstice, and perhaps that's why we celebrate it on the 25th today.
Wow, I am so intrigued by how the different backgrounds kind of all blend together, and there's still this like blending happening today of all the different practices, and how many people are practicing not only Christmas but celebrating the solstice and Yule and various forms of this energy in so many different platforms.
Yeah, because it's some of the longest nights of the entire year, and Saturnalia was also a big celebration because they were excited that the days were going to get longer again.
Do you know of any of the traditions or practices that they may have done for Saturnalia?
Yeah, so I read one which was hilarious, where during the time of the celebration, a lot of things would happen. And one of them was people would go door to door and sing and do these things, but apparently maybe some of them were a little too rowdy, because there was something that said, they would get a little rowdy and would like demand people give them a gift or like money or something like that. It's very interesting. They would drink a lot, and they would just basically party, have like a grand time with everybody. And they wouldn't work. They would close the shops. They would close businesses, and they would just have like a fun party.
I'm kind of curious now about Yule and more background on Yule, so I'm kind of going down that rabbit hole here for a second. Because something else that really kind of bothered me was the 12 days of Christmas. Do we know why there's 12 days of Christmas?
And that might be another tradition I'm not too familiar with. Maybe like the Jewish tradition. I know they have Hanukkah, and they celebrate, like, they get a gift 12 days, I think, leading up to Christmas, or something similar to that. I'm not 100% sure, so.
Well, a quick Google search, because, Google apparently teaches us everything. It says that the Yule log was a whole tree that was meant to be burned for 12 days in the hearth, and that the Celts believed that the sun stood still during that winter solstice time. So they thought by keeping the Yule log burning for these 12 days, it would encourage the sun to move, making the days longer. So it started the kind of idea of the 12 days of Christmas, and I'm sure that kind of grew from there. I'm not a huge fan of the 12 Days of Christmas song. One time I was tortured with it multiple times. I worked at a hospital, and there was a player piano, and it only played certain amount of songs, and somehow the CD got stuck on repeat on the 12 Days of Christmas on my night shift. So I had 12 hours of the 12 Days of Christmas. That was the longest shift ever, guys.
That's funny. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so I definitely was wrong on that one. But that is very interesting. Christmas is crazy, because most celebrations that we celebrate now, they came from a tradition of celebrating the solstice. And I think that was just really interesting. That was a common theme that came out to me when I was looking into it. All the ancient traditions were celebrating the solstice, and they all thought it was the most powerful time of the year. So the fact that we're in the most powerful time of the year, anybody listening to this in the future, we just had a grand conjunction with Saturn and Jupiter coming the closest that they've been in hundreds and hundreds of years. We're returning to the age of Aquarius, And some really powerful alignments are happening. There's going to be a month in 2021, I believe, where at least 7 planets are all going to be in Aquarius.
Yeah, that conjunction energy just feels so powerful. I know it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it feels like a portal has opened. And 2020 itself, this whole year, has kind of felt like a portal. And it's been really strange because I'm like, I can't believe it's already Christmas time. It's like time is flying, but yet frozen. And I think that's what happens when we collectively go through a portal. And even people that don't necessarily maybe believe in astrology, they have to admit that something crazy has happened this year. Something crazy. Real quick though, I do want to give, you mentioned the Jewish holiday in Hanukkah, and if my memory serves correct, that has to do with the fact that they only had so much oil for their menorah or something along that time, so it lasted a certain amount of days, and they celebrated kind of the rededication of that energy. So and then somebody in the chat asked about Yule again, and just one more thing, and then I want to dive into the more spacey things. But it says that Yuletide lasted for the 12 days because they were supposedly leftover days at the end of a calendar year, and these 12 nights became a special time where the veil between the worlds became super thin, and they were able to celebrate and just kind of celebrate the end of the year. As they moved in and the days started getting longer. And because they celebrated and the days started getting longer, they thought it was from their celebrations.
That's awesome. I love it. Okay, cool. So, we had another question, and it said, what do you think will happen during all that time? This year coming up is going to be a big year. And I think that's a great question. And it leads us into our next, kind of segment for today's episode with the aliens is, what is our evolution happening with society? Where's civilization going, and what is happening with these traditions that we're celebrating? And I think that's a great question. I feel like we're entering a new frontier. You know how there's these different evolutions in society where we would move from the industrial age to, where I think we're going to a space age from here. And I think hopefully with everything clicking and being in harmony, we will have a lot better technology, free energy, all that great stuff, and disclosure with the extraterrestrial civilizations on other galaxies.
Dude, I find it crazy that
other solar systems.
Yeah, I find it crazy that it was a former Israeli space chief that came out with that information. Of all places, it's somebody from Israel, We're celebrating the time of Jesus now, and the King of Israel and Bethlehem. And
the Star of Bethlehem just happened.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that it happened during the year that we see the Star of Bethlehem after like centuries and all this craziness. So of all the times,
it's like an angel delivering a message.
So yeah, the Israeli space chief came out and said that the Galactic Federation is a thing.
Confirmed.
Yeah, and that apparently Trump and other world leaders know about it, but people are like, so why are you coming out with this now, dude? And he's basically like, well, I'm old. I think he did it around his 87th birthday, and he basically was just like, I would have been offed before, so now's my chance to share this information. And
yeah, I think he even said 3 or 4 years ago it would been completely different. So the fact that we're just 3 years he's ready now to talk about it, it's so close to everybody just being like, okay, this is what's really going on.
Yeah, and he said that it was a good time because there's already kind of mass hysteria happening with the COVID, and he's also seeming to be kind of curious if COVID isn't something to be a part of it, because one of his whistleblowing statements was that the United States supposedly has a contract with the alien beings so that they can come and do experiments here, and people are starting to wonder if COVID is one of them. So it's a pretty wild situation that's happening out there.
So wild. Whoa. And hopefully I'm feeling like, we'll be able to activate our collaboration with the Galactic Federation and all the other, civilizations out there, and be able to come to an agreement with, all of us, where not just aliens that are going to experiment are going to be here, where it's going to be all kinds of civilizations working together, and maybe we'll get to, travel to different places, and we'll have different colonies on different places. And what's going to happen to Christmas, during that time? Like, are people still going to celebrate Christmas on other planets?
Well, I thought it was interesting when you wanted to mix Christmas and aliens in the discussion tonight, because when I was little, I always used to think that Santa maybe was an alien, because like, how did he have these magical powers, and like, how could he
flying
fly
around a spaceship? Maybe,
yeah, like maybe he was using a spaceship, or like nobody ever goes to the North Pole, so I had this idea that maybe the elves were actually a form of aliens, but also like part fairy, and it was like this big like just cover up for the Fey worlds and the alien-esque worlds. And I could go down rabbit holes, but some people think that I'm crazy, and you know what, I just don't care anymore, because if people can come out and talk about Galactic Federation, then obviously the world is starting to shift. And I think that that's again why people are allowing this discussion at this time, because 2020 has thrown so many things at us. Like, people wouldn't be as surprised right now.
Yeah, watch out for that kitchen sink,
Yeah, like people would probably be like, okay, can they save us? Like, thanks for letting us know. Is there anything they can do? Because the world's kind of falling apart right now, and we could really use some extra hands down here.
Yeah, well, in Star Trek, they can't do anything until civilization is ready and their main population is ready, and with all the movies like trying to make aliens seem evil and violent and something to be afraid of and fight, maybe some of them are, but definitely not all of them. And hopefully there are ones that are ready to come and help us.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot like humankind, like different civilizations have different beliefs, and there's probably different races of alien-esque energies out there that maybe aren't the friendliest, and maybe we came into contact with them first. But I feel like there are some people out there that are channeling something bigger than us as humans here. And, when I get into my channeling state, it just feels like there's something galactic out there that wants to work with us beyond just the God-like energy that put us here. When I read the book Prism of Lyra, it really opened up a big perspective for me on how humans became humans as we know each other today, and how there's probably a big galactic presence in our programming, and why there are so many different shapes, sizes, colors, backgrounds, ethnicities of us and other animals for that matter. So it's pretty crazy to think. And maybe there is some sort of Christmas like energy out there in the galactic universe, who most beings like some sort of gifts. I think even in Star Trek, like the Klingons have their own form of something Christmas like.
Yeah, I would like to see that happen. I think it would evolve and turn into something completely new, where these people would combine them. Two different civilizations kind of would combine them, kind of like it's been happening.
Yeah, it's an evolution. And I think that Christmas is important for many reasons, but one, because it does find a way to bring people joy. And not just Christmas, any winter holiday that is bringing people joy and bringing them closer together in their communities. And it doesn't always have to be about consumerism, but people really do get excited to receive something in exchange for the energy they put out into the world. And I think that's where Santa Claus becomes important, and the idea of him. I've seen a lot of parents really struggling this year with the idea of Santa Claus, and the idea of wanting to be more transparent with their children and things like that too, especially since they're in like close confinement with them, and it's harder to, bring the same kind of Christmas magic as before, especially when Amazon and shipping's involved and people are getting gifts and things late. And it's I've been seeing a lot of parents struggle, and I've tried to remind them to share with their kids, like Santa Claus is an idea, it's a magical concept, and no one ever really told me that Santa Claus wasn't real, and I think that kept the magic and the concept of magic alive for me for so long, and I wanted to go along with it for my family too, because that was the one time I got to see my family believe in magic and get excited about the idea of magic and miracles and the way things can happen. And if we as a collective believe in that Christmas magic or that wintertime magic, it allows the collective to have this mass opportunity for miracles to happen in this magical time. And maybe that's why Saturnalia and Yule were so mystical as well, because the collective believed in it, they could move mountains and imagine people flying and doing all the mystical things that, it takes power in numbers and belief to make possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and someone was saying that they believe in all the mythical beings because, how would we know about them if they didn't exist at one time? And also, I remember watching, the Santa Claus, and one of the little boy's lines when he was talking to his dad was like, have you seen $1 million? And he was like, well, no. He's like, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not real.
Definitely. Just like a lot of people say you can't see love, but we know love exists, and it's quite a feeling. So
powerful feeling.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what it's about too, is that embracing of love. And I sure hope that if there's an alien species out there, they're embracing the concept of love, no matter what they call it, that connection to one another as souls or existing beings.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really interesting topic, and I hope to get a little more spacey with some of our episodes in 2021 and kind of explore, that a little bit and, see what happens. But this is a great topic, and I can feel the magic happening. It's one of the reasons why it's such a time of the year that I enjoy, because of that magical feeling, especially on like the evening of Christmas Eve. It's just, even I've been alone, so I've woken up on my own. I've woken up without any presents, without anything, and had been just as happy because miracles happened all around me. It wasn't a miracle of like getting a gift or being with family. It was a miracle of like having this magical snowfall, or having a moment where I wake up and there's a giant, Jesus statue in front of me holding out its hands, like something just super beautiful and magical.
It wasn't there like snow and there was like a perfect path to the statue.
So what I'm referring to, at one moment I was traveling a lot in 2012, especially at the end, and made it to Mount Shasta for the 21st of 2012, and we stayed there for a while and met a drum maker. Christmas Eve, we ended up staying the night at this drum maker's shop and woke up on Christmas, and it was just like me and a friend, and we woke up and I looked out the window, and the exact width of the window was a perfectly paved path to the statue of Jesus. And I don't consider myself, Christian really anymore, but I still felt it was magical because of Christ consciousness, because of, just all this energy and everything I was learning, and just waking up on such a day. There was these trees that were surrounding this path as I was walking up, playing my flute to the statue, and this little sprinkle of snow was just like consistently falling all around me, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. And it was a Christmas miracle. It doesn't have to be what all these songs that we hear over and over it has to be. I think whatever happens, we just got to look for the magic.
Yeah, I'm hoping that this is a year of magic for many, because I know so many people are going through a hard time, but there's just as many people trying to be out there and be their own Santa Claus for the world. And earlier somebody asked what I thought the conjunction was going to be, or what that it meant for the world. And to me, it's a new age for people to wake up to being the best version of themselves. I know that's something we talk about all the time, and it's something that I talk about a lot in my different teachings and courses and offerings and whatever. But now more than ever, people need positivity. They need somebody showing up and just being their authentic selves and trying to cheer each other up and being a smile and leaving that mark. Like St. Nicholas left his mark as being somebody who saved people, and he evolved into this giver of gifts and joy and jolliness. And I don't think that we're going to be remembered quite like St. Nicholas, but if I can be remembered for bringing a smile or a light to somebody's day, then I think that is a powerful thing. And I'm here to ask others to kind of think about that for a second and ask yourself, like, what do you want to be remembered for in this age of Aquarius as we shift into this new opportunity, this kind of portal into what the new world can be. You know, we can believe that aliens are here to help us. We can believe many different things, but I want people to believe in themselves and the power of the opportunity that is kind of being laid out in front of us here with this crazy year that we've all had together. Not just here in America, but the whole world has went through a huge collective shift. And it's time to really wake up and shine on with that energy and allow themselves to feel into what they can do to leave their mark and make this a better place.
I love that. So I was curious if you wanted to do a reading, or if you had other things you wanted to say before we kind of get towards the end of the podcast. I almost said meditation because I'm so used to doing meditations.
Well, you kind of threw me off. So
I threw her off. She was in a flow, and I was like, all right, we're going to end it right here.
I don't remember anything. Okay, so I do want to do a reading. Can we take a quick break so I can pull my cards out?
We'll take a quick break, and that's why I wanted to offer it to you, because, you know, we have a break time, and then I have not much to say about the sun, but I do have a little bit about, to say about the sun. So hang on there. We'll be right back. All right. So I have just a little bit of solar flare news for you. Not much is going on. Our last major solar flare was on the 14th of December, which was last week. And it's been pretty chill since then. So it looks like the solar flare, the sun activity, is giving us a little bit of break for the holidays. And I will say that the solar wind speed is a little high right now, but beyond that, there is not much happening. So yeah, that's what I have for you. I'm excited. Sometimes it's okay to have a break. I feel like it's kind of revving up. And then after, the new year, I'm sure it's going to pick up. And I'm sure we'll see some M-class flares in 2021 and possibly even an X-class flare in 2021, which means, one of the times that happened for me was in 2011, 2012, and my consciousness was really exploding and expanding, and that's part of what I think happens when we have all these solar flares, because light is information. Information is traveled through light. So these solar flares bring in this light, creating these beautiful auroras around our magnetic sphere, is like information sprinkling down to us if we're willing to accept it. This activating of new consciousness, higher consciousness, of higher channels, and bringing in what we can to make this a better, more harmonious world. And now I'd like to pass it off to Shannon Shine for a reading.
Thank you, CeeLo. Gave me time to grab my light deck, keep my channel flowing. So I have a message for everybody here from the Language of Light Oracle. It says, first, we need to get grounded. It says, circumstances may have affected our energies, and you may be feeling disconnected, scattered, or overwhelmed. Who feels that during the holiday? Basically everybody. So you may be bumping into things or forgetting if you've locked the door or turned off the iron or the stove. I know I've had those feels lately. It's just been kind of scatterbrained, but it says stop whatever you're doing and just breathe. Let yourself be here for a moment. Really appreciate what's around you and call all your dispersed energy back to your heart. And imagine any imbalanced or excess energy flowing out into the earth, and really feel the calmness of nature in exchange. So maybe go outside and take in that air of the recent conjunction. I know it was yesterday, but you can still just take in that vibe in nature. It says nature uses the energy for growth and expansion, and this is symbiotic to co-creative processes that we need to remember and honor. When you recenter, you will begin to feel more aligned, relaxed, and at peace. And this may also be a message to spend more time outside in general. Nature lovingly resets our energy, and it holds no judgment, but it simply allows you to accept. Some other things this card says is that it's just important to do research on what works for you. I find that specifically important in the holidays, where if you're feeling pressured to do things that aren't in alignment with your own being, allow yourself some reflection time and get grounded and do things that feel good for you. I know CeeLo and I, we mix different traditions together to really be able to celebrate in a way that feels good to us. Being spiritual beings and not specifically religious beings, and many of you listening probably are too, it's okay to kind of practice where you feel called. You know, if you're feeling the Yule tradition or the Christmas tradition, or even kind of incorporating other traditions that seem important to you, maybe you have some connection to them beyond what you know in the now. That being said, the next card that came to us is the Light Beings card. And I thought this was a good card because we've been talking about kind of alien galactic energies, and sometimes those can be light beings and kind of that channeled light energy. This card says enlightened soul information is coming. It says this image depicts a light being, and it's a bunch of stars and planets. And for those listening, I try to share these photos in the Bring Me to Life community group on Facebook. So if you want to interact with this reading or see the pictures, let me know. But it says this term light being is used to describe a range of ethereal forms, including guides, angels, and alien-esque energies. They observe your life form at a higher perspective so that they can see the most auspicious path for you to create your dreams and desires. Sometimes your light beings may seem to take you down a path fraught with difficulty. However, everything happens for a reason. Just as we know a baby will eventually walk, you too will find your footing and attain your dreams. But you must first aim for them. Your light beings are here for you, not here to save you, but to help guide you. They won't interfere with your ability to create unique paths and conclusions, but they will be here to cheer you on and to guide the way. They are the keepers of the faith, and they hold on to that stream of your past, present, and future, and they want to help you keep dreaming and bring your desires out from your heart into the reality. It says only you can decide, though, what to do with these dreams and that information. You can choose to work with the angelic energies or the spiritual energies and these light beings, or you can continue to stay on your own path and take one step at a time in your own way. Whatever you choose is fine. There's no right or wrong, but know that there's this energy out there that's cheering you on. It says acknowledge how your soul sees you and allow yourself to kind of mold your beliefs about yourself in accordance with the way that your soul sees you. Personally, I find that statement kind of interesting because I've been going through a lot of old pictures and kind of looking at an older version myself, and just kind of part of me shakes because I didn't see the divinity and the connection that I had back then. And seeing it now from a future perspective is pretty powerful. So if you're feeling kind of at a low point right now, I suggest maybe go and look back at some of your past selves and see how much you've evolved. You know, maybe you did have a better time in certain chapters of your life, but there was a lesson to be learned, and maybe the lesson's happening now, and Spirit wants to guide you through that transition. The last card that I have for us is the Variance card, and it says the differing perceptions of ego and soul. It says today you may not feel like yourself. You and your soul are looking at the same thing, but seeing things differently. Your emotions and reactions are a combination of your thoughts and your soul's thoughts. And when they don't align, you may feel wobbly. This kind of sounds like the last card too. So I thought it was just maybe me feeling a little wobbly. Seems like everybody's feeling a little wobbly these days. So, that being said, variance is a way of explaining this wobble. When you have the variance, some perspectives as your soul... Wait 1 second here. I moved my mic. Okay. Variance is a way of explaining the wobble. When you have the same perspective as your soul, things just feel right. They may seem satisfactory and easy. There's no limiting beliefs or patterns that are triggered because you're in alignment. There's a feeling that all is well. It says your soul will never join you in judgment, blame, or hurt because it is not the truth of you. It is not the perspective of love that you deserve. And how you feel really reveals how aligned you are with your soul. If you're experiencing something that doesn't feel quite right within yourself, take a breath and come back to your center. Let's all do that for a second. Just take a nice breath. Breathe it in. Come back to your center. And allow yourself to just begin to feel better. Allow yourself to feel inspired to navigate your inner radar and ready to receive your soul's transmissions. We've been talking a lot about channeling here in the Bring Me to Life podcast in the last few episodes. And again, I think that's part of what this conjunction, this new opportunity is too, is to allow ourselves to channel what our highest selves want for us, what our creative selves want for us, how we can show up in the world and create a world we wish to live in rather than just showing up and going through the phases. So let's meditate here for a second with a vision. You can place your hand on your heart if you feel called to do so, but I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to become aware of your breath. You don't have to try to regulate it, just be aware of it. And allow your lungs to be soothed and nourished with the eternal breath that fills all of your senses. And if you can, try to smile. Try to smile with joy and grace in your heart. And allow your thoughts and emotions and tensions and tightness to all melt away. Let your being be transformed by your breath, your presence here in the now. And as your mind may try to wander, allow yourself to just involve the thought of what you could be doing in the world. Don't put pressure on yourself, just something little. Something little to spark joy for yourself or others around you. What's something little you can do to honor this time, this great, great portal, the conjunction, the alignment, whatever you want to call it. Even if you just want to call it the holiday season, what is one little thing you can do to spark joy? It doesn't have to cost anything. It honestly could be just smiling more. And once you're ready, really breathe that in. Breathe in that transformation. Hopefully with a smile on your face. And as you exhale, let go of all your worries, your stress, your tension, or your fear. And you can open your eyes and join us back in this reality. This beautiful reality that you're creating each and every day with the people you love. And that's all I really have for you guys. I'm hoping you have a great evening, day, night, whenever you're listening. A great holiday season.
Yes, happy holidays to everyone out there. And even if you're not listening to this on the holidays, happy days.
Yeah, happy days. We hope you continue to join us. You continue to tune in. Check us out at bringmetolife.com with the number 2 or Bring Me to Life Network on most social medias because we would love to hear from you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you all so much for staying awake
and shining on. For many of us, spirituality is just the quest to find essence or true meaning and to really just connect with a higher consciousness.
Connecting with your spirituality is very important in this life. By becoming mindful of all of it, you can realize where you are and if that is leading you to where you want to go.
Listen to the little simple things because it's those little simple things that are going to shift you vibrationally in such a way that will prepare you to become very intuitively minded and ready to step forward on the next part of your path.
I hope you can feel the love that's inside you, it's inside me, that connects us.
Thanks for shining on with us.